Alrighty. So really quickly, I'm just going to have Nella from OFLA, if you want to go ahead and introduce yourself really fast.
Yes, good morning. I am the OFLA Professional Development Chairman, and we are very pleased to be joining ODE to do these presentations. They're really fantastic. I'm looking forward to this one because I know this is something that affects a lot of our community here in Cleveland, where there is not a lot of, we lack some technology for our kids. So I expect this one to be fantastic. So thank you very much.
Good.
And welcome.
Thanks. And again, always a shout out to OFLA because they are hosting this via Zoom, so we can do it on Zoom and not have to do it on a different platform. They upped the participation so we could go over 100, which we really appreciate. So we'd love if you could help support OFLA. I don't know, Nella, if you have the link to join OFLA, if you,
Yes,
if you're
I'll
so
post the
inclined,
link.
we'd love to have you join. I know Terry Weekert, the membership chair, she is on via listening, but no picture of Terry with little baby Theo today. Oh, there she is. There's Theo, our little our little mascot. Okay, with that, I am going to go ahead, Nella, if you want to put there's a Google Doc that Nella is going to put the handout into the chat box for you, if you want to go ahead and open up that while I get to my screen to share. And if you notice the materials, you can notice the time URL pretty much has a pattern. It's always today's date with a hyphen and then WLC. So if you're ever like, some people are like, I want the handout ahead of time. Usually that's what the link is. Okay, I'm going to share my screen. Hang on a second. Okay, there we go. You should be able to see the handout. So you're welcome to access it. I see about 25 people are in there accessing it already, or you're welcome to just look on the screen and we will post it. We'll post it afterwards. So today's topic, if you recall on Tuesday, Maria and Kendra did a fantastic presentation on using digital like Google Slides and Edpuzzle and everything. So today what we're going to talk about is how to do like ideas for lessons for asynchronous lessons with kids who have low tech or no tech. Like Nella mentioned, this is a big issue, especially if you have students who are 3 or 4 kids are sharing, they don't have a device, they have internet. I know it's from what I'm hearing in districts, it's going to be a lot better this fall because they're getting devices out to people. I think it was Cincinnati just delivered 22,000 devices. So I know we're definitely better prepared for the fall than we were for the crisis in the spring, but it is an issue. So before we get started, the first thing I want to do is I want to do a Mentimeter poll really fast, just to sort of get a feel for where we are. So what I'd like you to do, if you recall from Mentimeter, if you go to look at the top of the screen and you can see it says, if you on your phone, you just do it on your phone or you can do it on another window, go to menti.com and then the code is at the top of the screen, that 285615. And I just want you to this is a nice sort of like it's like a polling thing, but this fall, I want you to answer the question, the students I am teaching this fall will most likely have, and I know you don't have them yet, but most likely left side is you strongly disagree, right side is you strongly agree, and you don't have to answer every one of these, you can just pick one. So for your kids this fall, do you think mostly, or your students, oh, there we go, we got it, yeah, they will either have full access, some middle ground access, or no access? So let's just get a feel for the group where people think their students are going to be this fall. And you can, like I said, you can answer all 4, you can just answer one. It's up to you how you answer. This is a nice tool to use with your students. Like if you just presented a big concept and you're trying to find out, does the class really understand what's going on? This is a nice way to do it where the kids don't have to admit, like, I don't know what's going on. They're much more likely in a poll to be like, okay, if I see 3 of my, the majority of my students don't understand what's going on. This is a great feature in Mentimeter. So I know I've been using Mentimeter a lot. So if you haven't checked it out yet, go in there because there's so much you can do on it with the free version. Okay, so it looks like the most about a good majority of people, their students are going to have a computer and internet or a smartphone with internet. Okay. And then there's still, though, a substantial who think they'll have a device, but maybe not have internet. And some kids are just not going to have anything at all. So we're going to focus on all of them today. It's not, I don't have all the solutions, obviously. It's really going to be, I put out some general ideas for sharing. And then I really expect this will be a lot of sharing via the chat box and everything about other things that you do. So I'm going to go ahead and get out of that. Just so you can see, if you look on my screen, once you're done with the Mentimeter, what it does is it goes back to yours, and you see over here where it says download results, and you can download that. If on the free account, you can download it into screenshots of the PDF, which you've probably seen those if you've looked at the notes from our meetings. If you have the paid account, you can download it to an Excel spreadsheet, but I'm never about paying for things unless someone else is paying for it. So, but I just want you to sort of see what the dashboard looks like from behind the scenes. And then when you get in there, you can see all sorts of types of questions and stuff. So if you haven't used Mentimeter yet, it's just a great, easy tool that, like you saw, you just get on your phone, you log in, and you're ready to go. Okay, so let's go ahead and take a look. And those of you who are joining a little bit late, if you didn't see, on the top of every page, I have the code of how to access this document too, just to help you out. Okay, so as always, I like to provide you with the references of where I'm getting my information. So you've heard me mention before, Catlin Tucker is just, her website is just catlintucker.com, and she's like this blended learning guru, and we've been lucky enough to work with her this summer at ODE, and she's just amazing. So if you need ideas, go to her blog. We're going to actually look at her offline choice board today as one of our examples. There's another, I went to a lot of different articles, and this one, second one on tech and learning, was offline activities with mobile devices. So I incorporated some of those, but another great article. And as always, we've talked about before, I think in the last one, John Hattie and his visible learning. And it's an article about what really matters when school is not in a physical building. So those are just 3 resources. There's tons out there, but I always like to try and just give you things that are easily accessible. So really quick, those of you who've been with me before in some of these sessions, is everything we're doing now is we're aligning it to Universal Design for Learning, which was our July 8th session, and you can access the handout in the same place. So just a real quick overview, if in case people hadn't been on UDL on that one before, is that UDL is Universal Design for Learning, and it's where we focus on how do we engage students in a variety of ways, how do we provide information in a variety of ways, the representation, and then how do we let them show their learning in a variety of ways. So the goal is that we provide more flexible learning so we can sort of hit a broad range of kids versus trying to just have a one-size-fits-all learning. And then just some real brief talking, the sort of summary points, that UDL, Universal Design from Learning, comes from the idea of architecture where buildings are accessible to everyone by eliminating barriers. We do the same thing with UDL. We create a learning environment that's flexible. So if something doesn't work, it's not the student's fault. It's that, okay, what do we need to fix in the learning to make it accessible to kids? We anticipate and plan for the range of all our students. Okay, so and if we look at the orange one, the first bubble here, that we know there are typical things that kids struggle with in a world language class. So let's just go ahead and prep for those ahead of time, because we know there's just, and if you look at that, the day we did that one, we had people put the variables, and I was like, oh, I hope we get like 10, and we got like 50. So, but there's typical things that and having taught online in the spring now, some other variabilities that kids are going to experience, or that you're going to experience. And the best thing is that we talk about designing to the edges. So it used to be that you sort of design to the middle and hope you hit everybody. But if you saw that TED Talk, there is no middle. We really have to design to, it's almost, I was reading an article yesterday, and they're like, if you designed your entire class for students with disabilities, you would hit everybody in the class. Or if you like designed to everything for like someone who's a native speaker, you would hit that. So that's what design to the edges is. We sort of design for the broadest range, because then you're likely to hit everybody versus going to the middle. The biggest thing, it is not differentiated instruction, which is where I design something specific for every student based on a label or a need. This is where I provide, I like the top line in the green is the best way I can think of it. I provide a buffet, and the kids serve themselves. So everybody gets a healthy learning outcome at the end of it, but they choose how they get there. And then the last thing, just a reminder about different types of support. So tier 1 support is when we do activities that every single person in the class could use. Okay, so and we shared a bunch of those in that, so I'm not going to go over all that now, but we designed a broad enough range of activities that we hit as many kids as we can. Tier 2 is where if all the tier 1 still doesn't work, we add some extra stuff for kids who may have individual needs. Tier 3 is when it has moved beyond what we can do in the classroom on our own. And so again, don't be afraid of tier 3. If you have students, I've mentioned before, my son has autism. It's not something that a typical teacher can address by themselves. He has an IEP team, he has support, et cetera, therapy and speech therapy and all that. So don't forget that it's not, there are people out there to help you. So if a student has really moved beyond, or you can't help the student with tier 1 and tier 2, go to that tier 3, bring in the outside team, bring in the parents, bring in the support, because we want to help the kids at every level. Okay, so that's just that overview on UDL, because I want to make sure everything is coming from that. We already did our Menti thing, so ignore that. Okay, so before we jump into the ideas, which I promise I have tons of ideas, I want to do a couple things. John Hattie, who I talk about a lot with the visible learning, and I mentioned before, his stuff is incredible. Even if you just Google John Hattie 256 effects of learning or something like that, he has done over almost 90,000 studies on over 300 million students around the world, to find out what are the most effective things what are the things that affect learning most and student achievement most in a classroom. And so if you just Google John Hattie, it's I think it was 256, you'll see what I'm talking about. And so he has a top 10 list of what, things that we think make a difference or hurt students. The data doesn't necessarily show that. So it's a fascinating read. But he's had a lot of stuff. I just actually went to his webinar the other day. He had a nice Q&A the other day about everything that's been happening. And I wrote down some things that he talked about that I thought really apply to us as we're entering the fall, especially because like I said, I can see things are heating up. Everybody's getting anxious and nervous, and we all watched the DeWine speech yesterday. So things are sort of at a weird point right now. So we're all, I'm even feeling anxious myself just talking about it. So let's get on, this. So the number one thing is we have to focus on our capabilities and what is the realm of our control. Okay. So there's some things out there that we cannot control. And if we try and prioritize things we can't control, it leads to that anxiety. It leads to that sort of, I hear a lot of teachers say, I just don't know what to do because there's so many things out there that I can't control. So we got to bring ourselves back in, especially now, and focus. Okay, what's our control? And the biggest realm of our control, within this context, is the learning. The learning we can provide our students is the realm of our control. So we need to know what digital access do my students have, and what do I know about their learning context? Now, how you get that information, is up to you as a district, but you just do a survey, and I think districts are actually already doing it, but you just ask your kids, what do you have at home? Do you have a computer? Do you have internet? Are you sharing the computer? Obviously whatever they want to share. If they don't want to share, they don't have to. But the more we know, especially with the remote piece, the more we know going into this about what's happening with our kids at home, the broader we can get those learning, that designing to the edges. So that's the first thing is we have to focus on what we can control, and we have to know our students and their digital access right now, plus their learning context. Number two, this was very, what Hattie said was that with all the data and the survey they did, that the method of instruction has the biggest effect, not the medium. So teaching online or in the classroom or whatever really did not have a huge effect on the learning. It was the method that the instruction was given. So even if you're not using a lot of high-tech things, but you're doing high-quality instruction remotely, that has the biggest effect on technology. Has he published anything? Yes. Just go to visiblelearning.org and you will see all his books. I've read his book, it's called Visible Teaching, Visible Learning for the Teacher or something like that. I think it was 2012. He has tons and tons of stuff. If you don't have time to read a book, go to visiblelearning.org. In the website on assessment, I put a couple links. If you go to that handout from last week, tons and tons of stuff. There you go. Yeah. And yeah, if you're like, I don't have time for a book right now, at least go to visiblelearning.org. Great things. Or just Google him. And there's thousands of stuff out on him. Okay, so the method we teach is more important than the technology, whiz bang and all the cool things. It's the method. Number three, the biggest thing based on, what happened this fall is that we want to, and I think we all know this, we have to spend the first weeks connecting with our students, building the relationships, doing the community, focusing on the SEL, focusing on equity, And don't assume that all kids are going to come back to school, whether it's in a building or online, and be like, yes, I so miss school. I mean, if you think about it, kids are sort of, since March, really have sort of had like a, pretty, I don't want to say an easy time because it's been stressful, but it has not been that intensive day-to-day, 20, 30 hours a week that kids usually have. So we want to make sure, especially if we start remote, but even if we start with that hybrid where you only have, a few, 10 kids in the class or whatever, that we have to build that connection and relationships in the SEL because it's just been so stressful. So don't forget, I mean, we can build that into instruction. I think the good thing about world languages is it's very easy to build that in. We're always doing the, talk about your family, talk about what you like. And if you have to do a little bit of connecting, and I've said this before, we're all about as much target language, 90 or 100%, but sometimes, in different situations, if you're like, these are first year kids, I got to do some connecting with them in English, do both, try and keep the target language in there. But again, it's the reality of the situation. We have to build a connection. Number 4 was really, I thought it really struck me, is that try to create as many opportunities for social interactions remotely as you do in the classroom. And so not just you with the students, but finding ways for the kids to work together, whether they do a Google drawing together or they work on a Google Doc or they make a slideshow together that they present in a Zoom session, but try and find ways for kids to interact offline. And we're going to talk a little bit about this today. And then next week also, the next couple of weeks are actually about planning lessons and doing this type of stuff. So we'll have some ideas then too. And again, I really liked his last line, that learning at home doesn't have to be a lonely activity with the parent as the only resource. Like what we're doing right now with these meetups, we're totally all working together because it is lonely to be doing it on yourself. Number 5 is huge. And this is a question that comes up over and over, I know, in all of our meetups, is the kids don't know how to work on their own. They weren't doing anything on their own. And again, we have to help, we have to teach. If the kids don't know how to do it, we have to be the ones to teach them. That's part of our role. So we want to build the student autonomy. And he found, which I think any one of us probably knew this, is that kids who are already pretty self-regulated, who had that self-efficacy, they were pretty much successful with remote learning. They got in there, they did their stuff, they moved on, and they were done. And what this provides us now with this opportunity is in the classroom, and I'm 100% guilty of it myself, is we're teachers. We love to talk. We love to be in charge. We love to run the show. And with remote learning, it just doesn't work. The teachers can't run the show with remote learning. And when we do that, we sort of help students develop that learned helplessness where they rely on the teachers for everything. And then like in the spring, they were sort of thrown like, okay, now you're on your own with one day, and everything just fell apart because, we hadn't had to do that before. But I think we realize now that it really has to get to the teacher isn't doing most of the talking, but it really has to become the teacher gradually doing more of the listening and helping the students become more independent. And we've done, when we did the UDL, just throughout this, everything we do, in the back of our mind is how do I, provide multiple ways for the kids to engage, receive the material, present it. So we need to build that autonomy because this year, especially, kids have to be able to work independently. And we know a lot of the older kids aren't going to have a parent around to help them at home. So we have to help them with that. And again, all sorts of strategies like this are built in. The last thing, and then we'll move on to some ideas, was the last thing he did from all the data that he has, all the research and everything that Hattie has done, is that he found that students, we all know how it is that you put the kids in the breakout room and nobody talks, or you're doing a Zoom live and it's like dead silent. I mean, it was sort of like I said the other day, when we went into breakout rooms, some were going crazy and some were like, I went in and I felt like it was dead silent. So we do the same. I mean, we do the same thing. We all do. And so what he did find, though, is that students are more likely to share if it's something like the Mentimeter or a Padlet, where they don't have to actually show their face and say it, but they're able to communicate, whether it's in an online chat box, they can post something in Padlet and Mentimeter, like we've been doing. If you have a Twitter, like a teacher, I know when I was still in the class, in the high school classroom, I had a Twitter account that was just for my students. It was just private in French. And so they would put stuff on Twitter all the time that they would never put on it. Like they even just randomly say, hey, I'm having a bad day. I just wanted to say hi, or here's some French or something. So this, I thought, was huge, that a lot of times where we struggle with kids in the live video sessions, we can get a lot of information about their needs in, actually, I see your question about Padlet and Mentimeter. We're actually going to talk about that. That's a great question. No, I totally lost my voice. Oh yeah. Okay. So yeah. So don't forget about getting stuff in the chat box from the kids and forums. I know if you have Google Classroom, you've got that stream right on the front page. And he found the data supports that students are much more likely to share because that's what they do. Think about the stuff they post on Insta and TikTok and everything. They share everything on there. So he's sort of like, if we can figure out a way to leverage that similar scenario with our students, we can find out a lot more about what they actually need, because they tend to shut down when they're on video, which I think a lot of people do. I don't just think it's kids. Let's see. I'm looking at Lee's question. Any thoughts about balancing students' preferences for online and in person versus encouraging face-to-face to build community? And Lee, that is a great question. And that sort of gets back up to this number 4 about the social interactions. And we're going to, like I said, a little bit today and then later in the next couple of weeks as we wrap this up, is that it doesn't always have to be face-to-face to be collaboration. For example, if the kids are working together on a Google slot, like they set up their own Google Meet. And so maybe they do show their cameras, maybe they're not, but they're working on a slideshow together. They're working on a document together. They're doing some sort of group work together. So it doesn't always have to be that face-to-face with everyone in the class trying to build community, because we all know that works in the classroom. We're very, very good at teachers about building a community when we have all the kids right in front of us and sort of, you know, they're sort of trapped with us, and we build community because we're really good at that as language teachers. But now with remote learning, it doesn't work anymore. I can't build community with 30 kids on a Zoom call when I know half of them don't have their camera on, or they're texting or doing whatever else they're doing. I'm sure the same thing is going on now, which is okay because that's just the way it is. So think about when you're trying to build community, it doesn't always have to be the whole group. It can be small groups of kids building community together. If you've ever taken an online course, I know I've taken a lot, and they'll put us in small groups where we work on a project together and then we present it to the class, or we post it asynchronously for the class to comment on. So Lee, that is just a fantastic question, and it gets to that we have to rethink, what does collaboration and community look like anymore? It really may have to be small groups that are then brought together as the whole group. Because even like when I have you guys put stuff in the chat box or on Mentimeter, and then people start reacting to it, we're building community. I mean, I feel, like I said, I recognize a lot of names who come to these, and I feel like almost like we've built this sort of virtual community together this summer, because everybody is sharing and feeling like we're all in this together. So I think, I'm trying to look at some of the thoughts or the chat at the same time. So yeah, we have to rethink, what does it mean to build community in a classroom? We're going to talk about that one. That's our last session, is actually building community and classroom, like sort of classroom management. And again, I don't have all the answers. I'm probably going to be doing some online classes with my ESL students at Columbus State, but I taught online like 10 years or 15 years ago, but it was a whole different world then as far as technology. So I try to think it through from the teacher point of view. What would I be doing? But again, I open it up to you because you all were actually doing it in the spring, and you're like, yes, this worked, and yes, this didn't. So, but that's probably one of the biggest things to think about, is when you're building community, rethink what that is going to look like. And again, sometimes if you just Google, how do I build community in a remote environment, there's tons of stuff out there. Okay. Let's see here. So let's move on to, so if you have the document, it looks like about 35 people are in there. If not, just go ahead and look on the screen. And like I said, this was sort of like I'm trying to get it all on one screen at once. I have a little smaller laptop here. Okay, so, and this was sort of just a brain dump from me. So feel free to jump into the chat box and start adding your own things. But the first thing I wanted us to think about was just, and remember, this is asynchronous. So this is not when we have students in Zoom. This is not when we have students face-to-face in the classroom. This is when kids are on their own, doing it on their own time. The link to the document, if you look on the screen, is actually, let me scroll up a little bit. It's tinyurl.com. Yeah, it's always today's date with a hyphen WLC at tinyurl. Yeah, sorry, you couldn't see that. Okay. Yeah, WhatsApp is one of my list. Is on my list, Nella. Very good. Okay, so when we're trying to have students access the material and submit their work, and again, this is asynchronous, not when we have them live. So I just made 4 columns, and I just sort of did the high tech, which is what we did on Tuesday. And really a lot of the stuff we've done throughout this series is the high tech, where I have kids with the internet and a computer. I know when they're with me or not with me, that's not an issue. And that gets back to, you have to know your students. So I put the link to those previous presentations. Leslie Grand, we had her come in the spring. She just presented with ACFA. I mean, Leslie is like a guru. She's fantastic. Check out her site. She's got all this stuff. So I think there's tons and tons of stuff out there for kids who have a computer and have internet. So let's focus on the harder part, the kids that may or may not have it. So I just sort of divided it, and I color coded it a little bit, just randomly. So I kind of defined low tech, and this is not like official, I just sort of did it my way like this. I defined low tech as students who have a smartphone with internet is like sort of the highest low tech. And then I put it as students who may have a computer but no internet, like they get a Chromebook, but when they get home, their Wi-Fi is sketchy, or they don't have, they're sharing it, and so they don't always have access to the internet. And then I put no tech, which is basically a student who does not have access to a computer or a phone or the internet, okay? And all of those exist because we saw that when we did that Mentimeter poll at the beginning. All of you had, I think the first two were the two highest, but the last two were not far behind. So let's talk about that.
I did have a question for Lani. I don't know if you saw it. It says, while structuring what teachers want students to learn in this balancing act for interactions, what methods can be used to infuse real-world platforms to issues of today to maintain their attention to subject matter?
I think exactly what we're doing here. Using Zoom is a real-world platform. Using Google Meet, using Mentimeter, all of those things are being used by businesses around the world. And so when and that's a great question, because it leads to always thinking about, and I think we did this in one of the sessions, assessment or UDL, is what am I doing with my students how is it preparing them for either current or future life? And that includes not just the instruction piece and the language and culture, but the technology. So that's a great question. So when you're using technology with the students, don't use technology, and I'm not trying to say like, don't do something, but try not to use it just to have technology for technology's sake. Really try to think to yourself, how is this really going to help? And when we think about it, they're using social media. And like I said, all of these meeting platforms, think about what your colleagues at work are using, because those are real world platforms. That's a great question. And point it out to them, like sort of like how we say in here, hey, we're doing on the meetup what you could do in your classroom. Say the same thing with the students. Hey, we're doing this Google Meet, and it's not just so you can come to class so I can do a lesson, but it's for you guys to collaborate on a project. It's for you to create something. So this gets back to Lee's question about technology really is right now the way to build collaboration, even with schools. I mean, I know we just found out at ODE, we don't even know if we are going back. We may end up being all remote, which sort of scared me because I'm like, oh my gosh, I miss my friends. But on the other hand, I sort of agree. If you recall from that, the very first session, we put out the Google survey and we said what worked the best for teachers. And we said the OFLA survey. And we said what worked the best for teachers in the spring. And the number one by far response was the flexibility of the schedule and the flexibility of my students being able to learn at their pace and me having more flexible hours. This is, I don't even want to say this is the future, because this is now the present, because COVID has sort of pushed this to the forefront. So everything we do in our classroom, as far as technology, collaboration, social skills, social emotional learning, should also be replicating what is actually going to happen when they leave us in real life, whether immediately or after school. I hope that helps. And I'm looking at what Ruby put. Yeah, if you think about in the spring, it didn't affect us as much, but PBS, and I still think they do now, and I'm sure they will in the fall, they are putting on educational programming that is content specific with a schedule saying, okay, we're doing K3 ELA today on this show. So yeah, I think everyone is realizing this is it right now. Even if we sort of kind of go back, it's never going to be the same, which is scary, but it's just reality. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about this. So this is just ways for students to either access resources or submit their work. So we're just going to start with the low tech. So if they have a smartphone with the internet. And so again, as I'm doing mine on the screen, feel free to throw stuff into the chat box also. Okay, so, and like I said, I just started thinking about, I'm totally stealing from all the things you guys have said over the past 4 months. I'm going to all these blogs, so it's not like I came up with all these great ideas. Number one seems to be that kids who can take a picture of their work and text message or email it to the teacher is huge. Maria showed us in one of the Google things that you can actually, with the teacher smartphone, can actually write on something the kid said or turn it into a PDF or whatever. That's a huge one. If the kids have a smartphone and they can text or email you, just take a picture of something you write. That's a good one also for the Google Translate. Like, we're worried, make the kids at least handwrite their assignment instead of having to type it, because even if they're Google translating it, they still have to type everything that they see on the screen, and maybe they'll learn something. But again, that's a way to say, you have to send me a handwritten essay. You can't type it in Google and submit it, and then obviously it hurts a little bit more with the grading, which is a different thing. We're going to do that on a different session, but that's a huge way. And I said this before, and I think it's so ironic that we used to do everything we could to stop having the kids use the cell phones. Remember, we're like, what do I do to get rid of the phones? And now those cell phones are really a lifeline for students learning. So it's just amazing how we can take a 180-degree turn just like that if kids who don't have a cell phone now are at a disadvantage. And if we don't use it, those kids are at a disadvantage. You can record your lessons and put them on YouTube. I mean, again, you can do private channels. I've seen teachers posting about, you can do an educational channel. There used to be like a teacher YouTube, I don't know, or teacher tube. I don't know if that still exists or not. Maybe someone can put in the chat box. But if kids aren't going to have a device, can you record your lesson and then upload it to a YouTube, and just make it where the only people who can watch it are people who have the link, and turn off the comments and all that. But then the kids can watch it via their cell phone on YouTube versus trying to watch it like on a computer. So that's a possibility. All of the school portals can be accessed via smartphone. So that's great, like Google Classroom or Blackboard. All of those can be accessed via smartphone. I know I have, like I said, I was taking online classes, and I did a lot of accessing materials on my phone. The other thing, if you're doing a Zoom call or a Google Meet that's live and the kids don't have a computer, they can still call in. So even if they don't have a smartphone, they can still call into the session. So it's not like kids can go, oh, sorry, I don't have a device, I don't have internet, I don't have to participate. No, you can still call in. So don't forget about that. Google Voice, I know, has always been popular, but I think even more so now, because it's sort of, and help me out with the Google Voice, because since I'm not using it with students in the last few years, help me out in the chat box if there's more that I'm missing. It used to be that the teacher set up the Google Voice box, which was like a private number. It's not like the kids knew your number, and you could set up a personalized voicemail for different classes, and the kids could leave up to a 3-minute recording. It was fantastic for speaking tests and informal assessments, because every kid could call at once and there was no limit. Now students can also text via Google Voice. Is that right? If someone wants to jump in there, kids can text to Google Voice. The teacher can send out messages through Google Voice. The other thing that's really cool is when the kids submit a sound file, although when they do it in the target language, it's kind of funny, but Google sends you a sound file that goes right into your Gmail account, and it gives you a transcription of it. So a little iffy on the different languages, but it's a nice way to communicate with parents also. And this sort of goes back to Lonnie's question, like, what's a real world platform? Because if parents can leave you a voicemail on Google Voice, not only do you have a record of the time that they called, but you have a sound file and a transcription of that. So if there's any question about, hey, I contacted you about this and you said this, and it's like, wait, I don't remember, you actually have everything documented in your Gmail by sound and by transcript. So that's a fantastic communication tool with parents with voicemails. If you're like, I can't listen to the voicemail, you can pull it up and you can read it. The other thing that's wonderful about Google Voice is if it does the transcription in the target language, or the kids do a speaking test, I should say, you get the sound file. You can then share the sound file back with the student with some comments saying, hey, I noticed, like at 27 seconds, you sort of said this and maybe this, etc. So Google Voice is just huge because of the ease of just using a regular phone, and the organizational tools and the information that it stores and organizes for you. So if you haven't used Google Voice, look into it for parents and for students. It's just a great free tool, and it's easy. The Remind app now is huge. I know a lot of teachers have said that their students who didn't have computer were able to text them on Remind. And so I think most of us at this point, if you have children, are familiar, even if you don't use it as a teacher, Remind app is hugely popular. So look into that. It's ways for kids to text and teachers to text and send messages very easily by phone. This next one, I have never heard of this. I stumbled across it in a blog, and it's called Google Keep app. So if anyone's used it, throw it in the chat box. But it's about, Lisa, Lisa Wareham, you might want to mute yourself there. Thanks, Lisa. Hi, Lisa. Google Keep app is a thing for, like, you can take notes on your phone. you can take notes, you can share, you can share the notes with other students, and they could collaborate on projects. So again, it was something that I had not heard of and I stumbled across. So I'm not going to speak to it like an expert, but I definitely, I'm looking at Beth with the transcript. Yeah, the transcript, yeah, for the languages is usually a garbled mess. Google Keep, though, check it out. I don't know enough about it, but definitely something to check out. And so as Beth's point, yes, that the transcript in the target language on Google, on the Google Voice is usually actually very amusing, but the sound file piece is fantastic, that if you can send the sound file back to the students and say, hey, listen to, section 30 seconds through 35 seconds, and let's talk about this. Okay. Okay, so Maureen says she has used Google Keep for personal notes. Okay, so definitely check that one out. WhatsApp, I think a lot of us are familiar with WhatsApp. It's fantastic for phone calls, texts. I know when we traveled overseas, we set up a WhatsApp with both our kids so they could call us, they could send texts. It's free, it's photos, files. If you're not using WhatsApp, it's just another easy way on the phone for students to communicate. And it's all, like, even phone calls are done over the internet. So that's another one to check out. And then I stumbled across this, for those of you who use Schoology, is that students can download Schoology files. Like, they have to have the Wi-Fi to download it. But then if they have an Android, I didn't see it for iPhones, which is shocking because usually it's the opposite, but they can actually see a view-only version of the document on their phone. So if you had like an authentic resource or something they were supposed to read, or even a quiz or something, they could still download it to their phone when they do have access to Wi-Fi, like if they're out, or something, or at school. And then when they get home, they can still at least view the document and then do the assignment by hand or however they do it and take a picture. So check out that if you're in Schoology. Okay, so that was if you have kids with the smartphone with the internet. So I think just looking at this, and from everything I've heard from teachers during all the meetups the last several months, is that if you can leverage the cell phone use as much as possible for kids, and a lot of a lot of phones now are just unlimited data. I don't want to assume, because it's not, but just leverage that smartphone with internet as much as you can for the kids who don't have a device with internet, as much as you can. And yeah, Jennifer.
Question here.
Yeah.
Jennifer says, aren't we only supposed to use school accounts to communicate with students?
That's a district decision. So you'd have to, that's a fantastic question. Yes. Everything we're saying on here, you definitely want to check with your district first because of the FERPA and all those other things. So great point. Thank you. Yeah, I'm looking at like the WhatsApp thing. So yeah. Okay, good. All right, so let's go to kids who have the computer, but they don't have internet for whatever reasons. Okay, so the same thing as with Schoology, that students can download Google Files, and I linked to a thing on Google that explains how to do it. They can download the Google Files, whether they're at school or if they're out at Starbucks and they have some Wi-Fi or whatever. Yeah, they can go to Starbucks, but not school or whatever. Sorry. They can download the files and then they can work on them offline at home. You have to go to the setup because there's a little bit more involved than just being that. You have to set it up. Like, you have to either have your school set it up or there's a way to do it on there, but it's a great thing. Is there a question, Nyla?
A nice, good comment and question, I suppose. It says, what does this mean for neighboring communities where there are very low, no tech, with current struggles with access to broadband rural areas? How will these issues be applied for connecting relative students to online access learning?
Yeah, and I think that gets back, I see the comment. That gets back to that thing where we said, let's focus on what we can control. So the big thing of getting kids hotspots, getting them internet, getting them that is not something that as a teacher we can control. That's a school issue with schools, and the state and businesses are all over that. They are doing everything they can to provide that broadband access. What we can do as a teacher is we can teach to what our kids actually have. So if I know my kids have smartphones with internet, that's exactly the point of this chart, is if I know I've got kids with smartphone and internet, this is what I can do. If I have kids who have no internet because they're in a rural area, these are things I can do. If I got kids who got nothing, this is stuff I can do. So again, we have to get back to, because we can fall into the weeds of, oh my gosh, the kids don't have access and they don't have this. And I personally cannot give computer access to every student out there. So like I mentioned earlier, the good thing is we're at a different spot this fall than we were in the spring, because districts, I know Cleveland and Cincinnati and Columbus are all over this with getting kids devices, hotspots, Wi-Fi. So again, it's a concern of ours, but as teachers, we focus on what we can do, and then we advocate to the people who do have the power to do that. We advocate to them to make a difference, and I think the difference is huge as far as that piece from the spring to the fall. Was there another question, or are we good, Nella? You're muted. Are we good?
Yeah, no, I think the one, she just had a comment, Kristen, be sure the platform you use in school is school approved, and she had a problem being hacked in remind.com. So that's always an issue with this.
Right. Yeah. Yes. So you're definitely right. Everything that has to do with technology, I think we're all pretty aware of that. But that's never, it's always a good idea to keep reminding ourselves before you use these tools, make sure that it's cleared with the district, that it's safe, that it's not blocked. I mean, districts block things for a reason. Okay. So
Lonnie wanted to know if he could print the chart. Can they print the chart once they have access to it?
You have access to it right now. It's that code that Nella put. So what you have to do is when you go into it, you have to make a copy for yourself, and then you can print it. You can save it as however you want. So yep, you just have to make a copy of mine, because mine is view only, just because I didn't want people to start typing in mine in the middle of our presentation. Okay, the other thing, and again, this depends if kids are coming into school or not, but don't forget about what you can do with a simple USB drive, okay, is that if the students do have some face-to-face time, and then again, this takes the teacher knowing this is going to be a need, is when the students are in the classroom, or where they can take, whether the bus sets up a hotspot or they go to Panera or something, they can download everything onto a USB, and then they can work on it offline at home. And then as you continue through the second dot, the student saves everything on the USB, and either if they get back to the teacher, the teacher can upload it, or they can turn in the USB to the teacher, or if there's if you have those things where students have packet drop off, they drop off the USB to the teacher, or they can upload it when they have Wi-Fi if they need to get it on Google Classroom. So don't forget about just the simple, little sad little USB that's sort of been thrown to the side, that is a lifesaver for a lot of kids. Again, that means that from the teacher's point of view, we have to know, okay, if I have students who are going to be doing this, when I create resources, I need to, I hate to always say you got to do two different things, because we try to avoid that. Can you create resources in a way that students can download to a USB? Not always possible, I understand that, but as much as possible, this goes back to that UDL, that design to the edges. When I'm choosing resources or making assignments, I'm going to have to come up with ways that students can access it in all sorts of ways, okay? But if we think about that ahead of time versus, oh great, I got a kid who now has no internet, what am I supposed to do? It goes back to even that planning for uncertainty we did the very first session. If I know this is going to happen, or it happens all of a sudden, I've got a plan. I may have to change my plan, but at least I have a plan for what I'm going to do. The same thing if it's videos, and again, I understand this can't always happen, but there's things like YouTube. I think it was Tuesday, we shared links. There was keepvid.com and online-convert.com, which were both great for downloading YouTube videos or other online videos that could then be saved to a USB and given to the kids. The other thing is if students have a smart TV at home, which again, not all of them do, but don't forget, you can plug a USB into a smart TV. So they could actually watch their lessons on TV, and how fun would that be? So again, just trying to, like I said, I've been doing a lot of research and trying to think outside the box, and please throw things in there in the chat box. But don't forget about smart TVs. If kids have that they can put it in. And I love what Anna just said. I'm looking at your comment that yes, as we all saw in the spring, we can't just do that and tell the kids to go out and do it. This gets back to, we had talked about, that those first days of school it's about community, but it's also helping kids become independent. If I know I'm going to be using Zoom, and we all know we could go remote in a heartbeat, then if I have kids face-to-face, we're doing a Zoom session in the classroom together and we're walking through it. If I know kids are going to have to download files to a USB and work on them offline, we're doing it in class. So Anna, I'm so glad you said that. It's true. Teaching kids how to manage a virtual classroom is as much a part of our instruction, actually fundamental to our instruction, as the actual language and culture part. So we have to build that autonomy, we have to help the kids know how to use what we're doing. The best format for them to download the Google Docs, now that I don't know if someone wants to chop in. I mean, I personally, if I download as Word docs. But if you want to be able to work on it offline, that one, I'm not, if someone wants to jump in, you can, there you go, PDFs, USB, etc. Thank you for Nella for jumping in there. Okay, so again, as we go through these things, if we have to know ahead of time what is our our students' technology access, and we have to design to the edges of that access. Okay, we don't want to be caught off guard because that's what happened in the spring. We can prepare for those variabilities that we know are going to happen. Other things are going to happen that we can't even imagine. Well, hopefully not, because I think enough has happened that we can't imagine. But the more we plan for what is a likely scenario, the less stressful it is for us, the more successful it is for the kids, the more just the anxiety goes down, and the learning will become the prime focus instead of the technology being the focus. Okay, so let's go now to the students who they're like, I got nothing. I have no computer, or, you know, my mom has a phone, but none of us are allowed to use it, or we don't have data. All right, so we got it. And again, you need to know that. If you're like, all my students have at least a computer or whatever, I know that's not an issue, then it's good, but it's never a bad idea to have this in the back of your head. So there's always just the standard, the kids get paper packets or hard copies. If we're doing a reading on the website, I'm also going to take a screenshot, put it in a PDF, print it out for students to take home as paper. So I think that piece is pretty easy, that whatever we do, we either screenshot it or download it, and we make a hard copy for students to do. As far as written and paper things. Did I forget? No, I didn't forget something. Okay, now another thing is again, this is where we start thinking outside the box. It doesn't always have to be just what I'm teaching them in school. See if, I know there's Spanish language channels out there. I think that's the only one. I've never, unfortunately, found other language ones, but we have a huge number of students studying Spanish, so I don't want to discount it. Definitely. Look at, either have them find one, or if you come across one, is there a TV show that they can access, or a movie that's on a target language channel? So it doesn't always have to be, I'm giving you this, see if either they can tell you, hey, here's a show that's on the Spanish channel that we have at home, and I'm gonna, what could I do with this? And either you give them an idea, or they have an idea, or you have a set thing that, this is what you can do. But you let them use the TV, let them use something that's already on the TV with an accompanying assignment. Sort of like I mentioned with the PBS, how they're doing it. I don't think they had anything for languages, but like I said, I think there's at least a Spanish language channel. Again, it's if it's available. Again, just an option. The other thing is, as far as the culture piece, and granted, it's not usually in the target language, but that's okay, look at things like the food channel, the travel channel, the history channel, that have so much that is culturally relevant to all of our languages, that they could watch that TV show, and you give them an assignment where in the target language, they have to sort of summarize what they saw, or they have to draw a timeline of what they saw or something. So leverage what's on TV, because that takes away from us trying to figure out how am I going to get all these authentic resources? Because even, like I said, this is where we have to start thinking outside the box. Even if the resource is in English, they can still do an assignment in the target language. This last one is something I stumbled across, and I put the link on it because, again, it's one I had not heard. It's called Tactic, and it's a Chrome extension that does transcriptions of Google Meets when you do closed captioning. Now, it is only in English, so it's not going to help, because I tried using it in the target language. Like, I was recording myself in a Google Meet speaking in French, and as Beth said earlier, it was just a hot mess of trying to translate. So it does only work in English right now, but it's not a bad idea if you are doing a Zoom session. A Google Meet. To record it and use, and it's an extension you add, and then you get like a little button when you're in your Google Meet to download it with. And then, but it gives you an extra transcript as a support for the students who either can't attend live, or like if it's something we're explaining how to use Zoom and you're doing it in English, or it's something for the parents. I know, Lonnie, you ask a lot about how do we bring the parents into this, where you're doing something for the parents about this is how my class is going to run, and you also have a transcript so the parents have something to read as they watch it. Okay, so again, always having that extra support when we have text and video at the same time, we know that is much more effective than just having one or the other. We okay with, Nella, okay with questions and everything? We good?
I'm just getting some questions about Netflix, because I put in there that we did do Netflix last year, and one of the things we watched a lot was cooking shows in Spanish.
Yeah.
And it was great, very interactive, and the kids really enjoyed it.
Right. So Netflix could work for your first two columns. wouldn't work for your last two columns. But again, that's exactly it. Okay, here you have a choice board. If you have Netflix, you can do this. If you don't, you can go on the History Channel. So again, that's a perfect example of how we design to the edges. Let the kids find the meal that fits them both best. I got Netflix on my phone, I'm doing that. Oh my gosh, my dad watches the History Channel all the time. I totally know I'm going to do that. So again, great way to show that universal design for learning. We're designing to the edges. Okay, so this is, that was that one about how do kids actually access resources and submit their work. So again, it's not everything. It's just sort of, I was thinking myself personally as a teacher and things I found. So please keep throwing stuff in the chat box or about other ways you are providing information to students. All right, so we only have 11. Okay, we're good. So let's get into the next one. So now we get into, okay, this asynchronous again. So it's not when we're live with the kids. The kids are accessing information on their own, because this is going to happen a lot, whether it's because you're doing hybrid where the kids are only there 2 days or you're completely remote or whatever. So what I did on this one is, and again, not perfect, I was just like sort of doing a brain dump, is I took an activity that was done with high tech, with the computer and internet, and I tried to figure out how could I do that same activity across the other 3 columns. Okay, so what I decided to do, I'm like, I'm going to do a 5-day bell ringer thing with the kids. And notice what I put right here is that we don't need to be the ones doing the bell ringers. Make the kids be in charge of doing the bell ringers. I mean, they're much more creative. It's not a bad idea for us to do it periodically. But again, if we want to get the kids being more independent, getting to collaborate with others, give them, maybe it's a group of students, you're in charge of the bell ringer for the day, and you can either do this or you can come up with your own activity. And that, as Lee had asked earlier, that's another way to get that collaboration with the kids, to build the community that 3 of the kids are presenting the bell ringer to the rest of the class. So again, use technology to build the community and the collaboration. So let's say that Monday, either I pick or a student picks a lyrics training song. If you haven't used lyrics training, oh my gosh, you have to use it. You can get videos in the target language with the transcript underneath, a karaoke. You can print the lyrics and make it a fill in the blank quiz. You can do the lyrics. A lyrics training song can be literally the focus of an entire unit, because if you get one with a good message, it can be a reading, it can be, you can launch a writing or a speaking, you can launch conversations, you can bring culture in, you can bring vocab, grammar. If you have not used lyrics training, go ahead and use it. And you don't have to sign up. It says on there, sign up for an account. You do not have to sign up to use it. So, and it's free. All right, so maybe my bell ringer on Monday is that I post a lyrics training target language song of the week, which the kids can watch whenever they access that lesson. Okay, so this is the first lesson of the week. So maybe they do it on Monday. Maybe my kid does all 5 of his lessons in one day. That's okay. He's still going to do the 5 bell ringers. And maybe it's just something as simple as, how many times did you hear the word, intéressant or something like that? Or how many times did you see such and such on the video? So don't just make it that you look at the song and listen to the words, but make the kids listen for something in the song, or how many times you do it. You can even make it a competition if you wanted, or whatever. Okay, so that's what I can do for kids who have everything. If the kids have a smartphone, they can still do it, not an issue. If the kids have a computer or no technology, we're going to have to switch it up a little bit. So what I could do is I could print out a copy, because like I said, in lyrics training, obviously they won't have the music, because if they don't have access to the internet, but they could still get the lyrics. And so I give them a hard copy of the lyrics from lyrics training, and I just have them say, okay, the song had a lot of colors in it. So write all the words that you see, or all the foods that you see, or all the colors that you see in the lyrics. So it becomes more of a reading versus a listening, just because they don't have the internet. Or highlight 10 words that you already know in this song, and then based on those words, try and guess what is the overall theme or feeling of the song. So I don't need you to tell me what everything means, but you saw, I saw sad, cry, and 10 words, and say, okay, so what do you think is the meaning? Remember, this is just a bell ringer. It's just a little 5-minute activity. Or just tell them, just noticing, highlight the refrain of the song, or highlight repeated words or common phrases throughout the song. Another one could be highlight 10 words that you don't know in the song and find their meaning. And I don't care if they use Google Translate or whatever to find the meaning of the word. And then use those words to try to guess the overall feeling of the song. So again, we're trying to build that independence and that way of using knowledge that you either have or don't have to have more knowledge. So there's 10 words. I don't know what they mean. I'm going to look them up, and I'm going to try and guess what the song means. We're building literacy skills. We're building that self-efficacy. We're helping them take control of their own learning. Again, these are not perfect options. They're just things I was just sort of brainstorming and brain dumping, like, okay, I'm in the classroom with these kids, or I'm remote with these kids. What am I going to do? All right, so that's one bell ringer. Tuesday, maybe the bell ringer for Tuesday at the students have to create a meme in the target language that shows how they're feeling today, and they have to post it on Padlet so other students can react. Someone had mentioned Padlet earlier, and yes, we totally brought it in. So Padlet, if you haven't used Padlet, great free resource. It's like an online bulletin board. You can post videos, you can post images, you can post all sorts of things on Padlet. It's much more robust than it used to be, and other students can react. So they post their meme, the other kids react. You can set up controls where the teacher has to do that. And this can be remote. I think that was the question. Yes, you can just leave the Padlet open and the kids can post it. The same as the Mentimeter. I could just, I think if, gosh, I don't know, someone ought to go, I'll have to go to like a Mentimeter that we did last week. Someone go in there and see, can you still post? The results wouldn't, you know, the results wouldn't be shared with everyone, but I don't know, you may be able to. But Padlet, yeah, just keep the Padlet open. Kids post a meme about how you're feeling today. Other kids react to it. They have to make a comment on it. Just a fun way to do it. Okay, so what do I do if the kids have a phone and no computer? Same thing. I think there's apps on your phone where you can create a meme. If they can't, they could still take a picture from their phone and post it on Padlet and then put the text underneath it as their meme. So it's not the actual, you know, the cat with the grumpy cat at the kitchen table or whatever. So maybe they post a picture of the cat and then they write their own line underneath it in French or Spanish or Chinese or whatever, okay? So what happens when the kids don't have the internet, okay? So if they have a computer, they could make one in Word or PowerPoint, and then they could submit it to the teacher, whether it's on a USB or however they're submitting their work to you when they don't have internet. And the same thing, if the kids don't have any device or internet, they can draw it, or if they can cut out a picture from a magazine, or they can print off a picture on well, they don't have a computer, they can't print it off. They can get a picture on a magazine or something, or they just draw it. I mean, kids see memes out there. So again, we think if you know, I'm gonna have a meme that the kids have to show how they feel today, and I have covered all my bases, because you may find that there's kids who are like, you know what, I wanna draw my own. I'm a really good artist. And this is what we're talking about with universal design for learning. If the kids have all of these options, they can pick whichever one they want. They don't have to do the Padlet. Like I said, I'm an artist. I'm a great artist. I do these all the time. I'm going to draw it. So that's the thing to think about when we design to the edges of the highest and lowest, or the needs of everybody in the classroom. You design for everybody. And this is where we get back into that UDL, where it was multiple means of representation to present the information and the production. This is what we're talking about. I think I've hit everything in here, and every kid is going to have a way to submit their meme. Okay, let's keep going. So now we're on to Wednesday. So this time I'm going to let the kids do a Mentimeter, and I don't know if you want to let every kid to set up their own Mentimeter account. That might be crazy, but it could just be that the student has to send the teacher, you know, here's all the different types of questions you can do on Mentimeter. I've done a lesson or something to show them. You have to send me a multiple choice quiz question with sort of a little known fact about Paris, or a little known fact about, you know, whatever, some country. I posted on the Mentimeter, and the kids access the menti.com with the code on that third day or whatever day they log in to do their lesson. And then once everybody has posted, whether it's by the following week or however you want to set up the deadline, then I will post the results for everybody, either online or, as I mentioned, you can print this out. So again, I'm doing a Mentimeter, but why should I create the Mentimeter unless there's really something I need? Let the kids create the Mentimeter and I'll post it for them. If the kids have a phone, they do the same thing because they're sending it to you. Low tech, same thing. I'm sending it to the teacher. The difference with this one is if the kids don't have a screen to look at, as I mentioned before, although like the Mentimeters, after everybody submits, like I said, for the free version, you can download the results in a PDF and it shows the question. So I could download that for a student as a PDF, either as a USB or a hard copy. This is really both column, the purple and the yellow, that they get a PDF of it with the questions and the answers. So they still are part of it, even if it's not electronically, they're still seeing what their classmates are saying, they're still participating. Okay, Thursday, I really like this one. I totally stole this one from one of those links I gave you, show and tell in a cell. And so what the kids do on the high tech is in the class forum or on Google Stream or wherever you want to do it, they post a close-up photo of a vocab word or content related to the content unit. Have you seen that, or the current unit? Where like you see a picture of something, it's like, you're like, what is that? And then they do the close-up and then they pan out and you realize what it is. So that's what I thought that was a really fun activity. So the kids post their, you know, close-up of it, their show and tell in a cell, and the other students in the class, whether it's in the forum or Padlet, whatever you're doing, they have to guess what it actually is. So you tell them it has to be something related to this unit. So we're doing a unit on travel or food or sports, whatever, and the kids have to guess what it is. Or you could do it where sort of that thing where I'm a part of that Facebook group that says a view from a window, where people post what they see out their window from all around the world. If you haven't joined it, it's very relaxing. View from my window. So join it. It's wonderful. But the kids post like a different student each week post a photo of a landmark or a key location in the target culture, and the students have to see if they can figure out throughout the week where it is. Okay, so obviously it's Eiffel Tower, we all know, but they post something sort of random, and the students have to see if they can figure it out, and you offer a prize or whatever for how it is. All right, so that's a full on tech. Phone, they could do the same thing. Okay, if the kids have a computer or no access, again, we get down to where the teacher can do screenshots of the picture, put it on a PDF or whatever, and send it to the student either via Remind or print it out if the kids have absolutely no access. So again, and that was the same for both of those. Oh, and for the kids to submit, they might have to tell the teacher, hey, I saw that in Cameroon, there's this little restaurant, blah, 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 that has this American name. I want you to post that for me. So the teacher may have to do the posting for the student online, but the student also will get the hard copy themselves to participate. Okay, so again, I'm like I said, if you put all 4 options out there and tell the students you choose whatever you want, because from week to week, kids are going to have different needs or different feelings also. Okay, Nella, any questions? I'm just barreling along here. We okay?
No, you're fine. Everybody's sharing a lot of information and helping each other with all kinds of questions. There is dictionaries that you can download. There is all information about some shows that you can see on Netflix, and some sharing.
Perfect.
So
great.
Yeah.
I love this group. Everybody, we're language teachers are the best. All right, I just made sure I saved the chat after that. I want to make sure I have this chat afterwards with all these ideas. Okay, sorry about that. I was saving that. Okay, so now we're on our last bell ringer of the week. And this time, this was a fun one I found that I thought was awesome, that the students create a sentence using all emojis and bitmojis. And they post it, again, in a shared space, whether it's a Google Doc or Google Slides or whatever. And the other students have to try and write the sentence in the target language and guess what the sentence actually is. And so that's the bell ringer. So I thought that one was really fun. And so, because kids love emojis. We all have everyone's getting bitmojis now too. So they could do that. A side thing, the bitmojis, if you change your phone language to the target language, all of your bitmojis on your phone will also change to the target language. So if you didn't know that and you're like, how do people get bitmojis? Because I have mine in French, so I can get French bitmojis. Okay, so you do the bitmoji sentence, the high-tech kids with the phone, or the kids with the phone can do the exact same thing. The kids without the internet or the phone, we get back to, let's go back old school. They can draw. Kids know the emojis, even if they maybe don't have access to print them. Every kid, kids know what the emojis are. The kids they draw them, or they use a PowerPoint or Word or a piece of paper and take a picture, and they submit it that way using their phone, or if they have a hard copy that they turn in every week to the teacher. So they can still do the bitmojis and the emojis. They just have to draw them, which again is not a bad thing. Might fix that. Okay, and then again, the teacher once again takes a screenshot and downloads a PDF with the bitmoji for the sentence and sends it to the students, or drops it off in the paper packet, however you're doing it, so the students can still participate. So again, every kid may not want to do it on their phone. They may want to just do it, I want to draw my bitmojis. I think it's more fun, or I can find there's a bitmoji I want that doesn't exist, so I'm going to draw my own bitmoji. Kids are ridiculously creative and stuff like this. So again, that was just 5 activities. Like I said, these were just bell ringers. But again, it sort of shows how if we try and do our thinking ahead of time, where we design to the edges, it's much better than trying to figure out, I've got to teach 3 different ways, because we can't do that. We will go crazy and quit. And there's already a crisis in languages. So again, it gets back to that. Okay, what are the scenarios? How am I going to plan for all these scenarios that hits everybody? Again, these would all be considered tier 1 activities. And by doing this, unless something comes up that might be sort of weird, I don't have to do any tier 2 activities. I don't have to do anything special for individual kids. And like I said, unless something comes up randomly that we don't know about, obviously there could always be. But for the most part, by designing a broad range of these tier 1 activities that any student can access any of the buffet items they want, I've increased the learning exponentially for everybody. Okay, are these, not necessarily, I'm looking at your questions, do these assume we have a day in the classroom? No, they don't, because remember, these were designed as asynchronous. Okay, so again, this may be where you have your Google Classroom, where you have slides, where you have a digital notebook like Maria and Kendra did the other day, on Tuesday, if you didn't watch theirs, about, I just do a slide every day and this is your work for the day. And so the bell, it literally says bell ringer, create a sentence using emojis, post it here on Padlet or post it in the Google Stream. So no, the whole point of this was to assume, ideally would be if I at least had the kids one day to show them this, but let's face it, folks, my opinion now is, as a teacher, as an experienced teacher, is we all know how to teach in the classroom. I'm not worrying about what I'm going to do in the classroom. I'm worrying about what I'm going to do remote right now, because we all know we're going to be doing remote. And if all of a sudden some miracle happened, which would be fantastic, and we're back in the classroom, I don't need to worry because I know what to do already. But what I don't know what to do is this remote, or I have half the kids in the classroom and half not. Because if I'm teaching, even if I'm in a regular classroom and I've got half the kids here and half the kids not, I'm setting up my classroom, I'm going to do some face-to-face stuff with the kids, but my classroom is also going to become a remote area where the kids are doing that independent work that they're going to do on their own. So it's not like, even if we have them in the classroom, that it's going to be typical anyway. We can get some of that building community, that face-to-face, but we just have to face the fact that at least for this year, it's not going to be the same way it was. And I think I recall with the first planning for uncertainty is that we have to, the two big things where we have to, three things. It was, we have to think about what we can actually control and focus on that. We have to be willing to admit the scary things, that this is going to happen and I hate it and it's uncomfortable. And this is just, I hate to say sucks on a world ODE thing, but it just is, it stinks. And this year is just going to stink, but I don't have a way out of it. So we're just going to have to deal with it. And then the third thing was, uncertainty always provides opportunities, and to think of it that way, and I'm not trying to be like, la, 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 because I know it's, all Pollyanna, because it is going to be rough. It's going to be a very, very, very rough year. But if you, even looking at some of these things on here, I'm like, even if I were in the classroom, oh my God, I totally do this emoji thing. So what's happening is it's really helping us, at least in world languages, we're really thinking about that designing to the edges and bringing technology, not just as a fun tool to make it more interactive, but technology actually as a tool that is a necessary part of learning and building skills, real world skills. And I keep going back to Lonnie's thing earlier about real world platforms, because all this, I don't know about writing Bitmojis in a company or whatever, but these are all skills of using critical thinking, trying to interpret things. All of these are skills that kids are going to use.
You do have a couple of questions here.
Okay.
One, it says, how do students without a computer phone can do this?
Well, that's what that second and third, that's what the third and fourth column is. That's what that's all about. And so if a kid has absolutely nothing, again, how they submit it is a district decision. Are we doing paper packets? Are we giving, if the kids have a computer but no internet, are we doing a USB exchange? So again, the big thing, how they actually get me the information, gets to them, is probably not in my control. That's going to be a district decision. However, the information I give them for that means is in my control. So that's what these second two columns are about. That's those kids who they're getting packages delivered, or the school bus is dropping them off, or they come once a week and get, grab and go with lunch and they get their homework. So that's what those two are about. What was the other question, Ella?
Yes, Karen said, what would a lesson plan look like to have half in classroom and half not?
That is actually next week is when we dig into, next week is where we actually get into designing lessons. So I forget the 2 days we're doing it. I know Beth on here is helping me. One of the days is interpretive lessons strictly, and literacy about what does it look like in the classroom. And then the other day is presentational, interpersonal, and that's exactly that topic. So yeah, what we're trying to do throughout the series is, and we wrap up August 5th, is we tried to start with the big ideas, work into the frameworks and sort of thinking it all out. And then the next couple weeks are all about that nitty gritty. What is it actually going to look like when I'm planning a lesson? So if you can tune in next week, and then the week after that, we get really into, let's talk about what it could look like. So great question.
Tara, kind of along the same things about not having technology. If students do not have access, how do we get them materials if we're not at school at all? And how do we get the materials from them?
Again, that goes back to what's in our realm of control. My control is providing the materials. How the students get it is not in my realm of control. That's in my building's control. So the principal decides, like I said, the kids have grab and go lunch. While they get the lunch, they pick up the packets. Or if buses are, sometimes some buses are going out and delivering lunches to the bus stops, that's when the kids get it. So again, the realm of control is how we can actually provide actually create the information, how it gets to the students. And I'm not saying abandon and say, well, they'll just figure it out, but go to your principal and say, hey, what are we doing? Because that is a building decision. Because what I do in my classroom, I can't come up with my own way of doing it and then someone else. So again, what can I actually control? And let's do that. What's out of my circle of control? Who do I go to help me with that? But still a great question. It's still, those are things we have to keep thinking about.
And Karen had another one. Do you think we teach all kids the same pace in the case that half the kids are in class and half are at home?
Do we teach, I'm sorry, do we what? Do we
Do
teach
we
them?
teach them at the same pace?
Nope. I mean, that's exactly what this is about. This UDL, it becomes self-paced. Remote learning is self-paced. We all know that. Probably most of us have taken at least one online course. If I had to sit either and wait for everyone else or try to keep up if it's something I'm hard with, this is, again, gets down to the personalized learning, the self-paced learning, the UDL. All of that is where we provide the buffet, and I keep using that term because I think it's just the most accessible, and the kids eat as fast or as slowly as they want. Now, we don't want to just leave them free for all, because some kids, again, if they don't have that self-regulation, will wait till the last day and try and do a zillion things. This is where you have to know your students. And again, I think there's a difference between upper level versus lower level versus middle versus elementary. Some kids are probably going to need deadlines. This is what you do every single day. Other kids may be like, this is what you do for the week. Other kids may be like, you know what, give me the entire unit and let me do it. So it really, and again, there's no right answer. So it can, again, even be, tell the kids, here's your options. You can access it day by day. You can access it week by week. You can access it, I'll just give you the whole unit if you have it, because how many of us ever have all that right ready to go, or you may. But again, let the students choose their learning. Now, as the teacher, if a kid's like, oh yeah, I'm totally just going to do it, and you see that they're doing it, at the end of the unit, they're trying to do 10 days worth of work, then it gets to, okay, a one-on-one with them and the parent if possible, but say, okay, for a week, I need you to follow the step-by-step because you're not getting the learning done. So the self-paced is even let the kids choose their pace. But again, as teachers, we all know we've got to help the kids learn to pace themselves. And so that's it depends on the students where you go, but that's a fantastic question. So, and this is where it's sort of an advantage. I mean, we all know that sometimes there's kids in the class, we've all said this, where I've got, 95% of the students get it. And there's those 3 kids who are still like on page 1 when we're on page, 30 or whatever. And we're like, what do I do in those situations? This is giving us the opportunity to address that situation. The student who needs more help can go and watch your video lesson 3 or 4 or 5 times until they get it. They can call you and do a little one-on-one with you. The other kids who get it, they move on, they make their progress, and they keep going. So again, it's one of those things with that it's like an opportunity that comes from uncertainty. We are at, oh my gosh, we're at 11:15 already. I'm just going to show you this really quickly. If you need to leave at 11:15, go ahead. We're recording. The next section, the last piece of this was these were just random things I came up with. These are not aligned across. Like the first 5 were like all 4 situations, what it looked like. This was, again, just another brain dump I was doing from research and thinking myself and everything about just other things kids can do as far as specific activities based on their technique. So again, there's no alignment. Just look down the whole column. So again, green column, you have all your Leslie Grant, you have all your stuff that we've shared a zillion times. So tons of stuff there. Low tech, if the kids have the smartphone. Again, we talked about Padlet, which Padlet can be done all together or can be done asynchronously. If the kids have the link and the link is open, it's not an issue. Kids can get paper copies with QR codes to scan, and the QR could go to like a YouTube video where the kids listen to the teacher do an explanation, or it goes to something else like that. So that was a cool one. Kids can, for the interpersonal, they can text each other or email each other or have a written conversation on a Google Doc and then screenshot that or share it with the teacher. And that could be an interpersonal conversation, whether it's on Google, it could be on Google Voice. Well, they'd have to be together. That wouldn't work. If it's like a written one where they can do an interpersonal written. Or if they were doing a video, they could set up their own Zoom call and have a conversation in Zoom, record it, and send it to the teacher, or Google Meet, or whatever you use. So again, that gets back to that collaboration piece. Use technology to let the kids still be together and socialize. They don't have to be alone. A thing about watching YouTube videos with no sound, write down the words that you think you're going to hear in the target language, or and then rewatch it with the sound and circle any words that you wrote that they actually said in the video. So, I mean, these, I don't have to go through every single thing because I know it's getting late. But on here were just all sorts of ideas for, okay, I've got a computer, and a lot of the computer and the no computer are very similar. A lot of times it's just writing it by hand versus typing or in a PowerPoint. And then gets back to Tara's question, how do I get it to the teacher? That's the question that the school has to decide. Is it USB? Do the kids, can they go somewhere and upload it with Wi-Fi? So the rest of the 3 colored columns, like I said, it's just a brain dump for some things I was thinking about. So you're welcome to look through those. Are there other questions, Nella?
There was a comment from Lonnie where he says we really have to have the parents come aboard with us for accountability, ensuring use of normal framework, etc. Beth had a great response where she says that she was talking at school about this, and she says once we go back, the parents really is key to educate them and to bring them aboard.
Right, and that's that's one of those things that's sort of in the realm of our control. Part of it is, and part of it is beyond the realm. So hopefully your district, if they have, or your building, if they haven't, is probably like conversation to bring up, is what's our means of communication with the parents? Because if the building says everybody's communicating through this method with the parents, it's easier on the parents, it's easier on the teachers because there's one way. If your district doesn't have that, and I know ideal world versus what's reality, but it might be like, hey, could we come up with like one means of communication? If they don't, then it's up to us in the classroom to set it up. Okay, parents, all communication with me, you can either Gmail me or leave me a Google Voice message, and that's how we'll communicate. And I will either get back to you, live if I can, because sometimes we don't want to use our personal cell phone. That's right. The parents are now, we don't want them to be the teachers because parents aren't teachers. That's not their role. They're not trained to be teachers unless they're a teacher, obviously. But even if you are a teacher, if I'm trying to do calculus with my son, not going to happen. So the parents really need to be facilitating the learning. The biggest thing also that I was reading with Hattie that he was saying is that parents have a whole new view of what school is. They used to think it was just the kids get information and it's either right or wrong. And now the parents have actually been firsthand seeing what's going on with their students. They realize, number one, what teachers are actually doing in the classroom and what learning actually means now. And so part of it is also changing that paradigm shift in the perception for parents of school is not just here's something and is it right or wrong and move on. It is an entire learning process. So Lonnie, you're 100% right. There has to be a collective mindset within the school of how are we involving the parents. And I've seen a lot of this. I think, again, spring compared to fall, I think is going to be radically different, hopefully, for a lot of people, because now we know all the things that didn't work in the spring. So now we can go to what does work in the spring. In the fall. Another question, or are we good?
There was one way back, and I hope Kayla is still here. She wanted to know if there's other PD like this done by other departments.
Yes, if you go to the ODE, this was an intentional thing back in May when everything was in crisis, when all the teachers were focusing, like we were doing all our virtual meetups. Remember, all the areas were doing virtual meetups where teachers were just sharing. Meanwhile, behind the scenes at ODE, if you're ever wondering, like, what do you guys actually do at ODE, is we had an intentional plan where we were all meeting about how are we providing PD throughout the summer to get teachers ready for the fall. So and it's all with the state organization. So we're doing with OFLA. So every content area is working with their state organizations to provide this exact same type of PD. I think we went a little over with OFLA and ODE and the world languages. We went a little bonkers with it, but I'm like, I don't care, man, I'm doing it. And so math, I know, has tons, social studies, science. Like I said, we wrap up August 5th. Well, August 6th, we have one for new teachers, which I posted, but that's fitting. And then the week of August 11th, 12th, and 13th, which I know some people might be back in school, but just so you know, it's coming unofficially, but I think we're doing it. So just put it as a TBD unless something happens. August 11th, 12th, and 13th is we're doing a huge ODE 3-day PD event where the first day is we have 3 topics, big topics to talk about in the morning. And then the 4th day, we have another topic, and then we do breakout rooms by content area the rest of the 2nd day and all of the 3rd day. So through August 13th, all of the PD from ODE, from all the content areas is happening. After the 13th, I think we're all just going to take a break and give teachers a chance to, get in there. We'll pick up back in September. I think we want to give you guys a chance to get in there, see what's working, get your, just breathe. And then in September, we'll start some meetups again. And I think they'll be very different because now instead of us saying, here's some things to try, I'm really looking forward to the teachers coming in and saying, this is what I'm doing, this is working, this did not work. And so I'm really looking forward to September when you become the experts to share again, even though you already are. CEUs, yes, Kayla, to find all those meetups that are going on, if you go to the ODE main page and just up in the search box, just put virtual meetups in the search box, you get a schedule of everything. And also, actually, if you go to every content area page, like how on the world language page, we have all of our meetups, every content area has a schedule of their meetups, and they all provide those contact hour certificates. Yep. Other stuff, Nella, or are we good? Hey, those of you who are still on here, do me a favor really quickly. Oh my gosh, I totally forgot to show you this. I'm sorry, it's in the recording. This was, and you can look at this yourself. This was from Catlin Tucker. It was her online, or I'm sorry, her offline choice board. And she has, so if you look on this current page, it gives you like what she always says, give the kids something to choose. How do they document it? How do they think about their process? And then how do they share it with their classmates? So she had this choice board, and I started messing around with it. I didn't get completely done with it. So here's the link. This is a choice board that she sort of gives us a sample. And if you click the link, it's a Google Doc. You can edit it and save it. So I started messing around with it, taking this is her stuff, and then I started trying to tweak it for world languages. So if you look at some of the activities, some of them I'm like, oh yeah, and I found an easy way to put it for world languages. Some of them I didn't. So yeah, check out her offline choice board. The one thing that she really says is these are big activities, so make sure that it's really like maybe just one thing a week that the kids have to pick to do. But I liked it. It was really fun stuff.
Oh yeah.
So
That's just me.
yeah. Okay. So yeah, sorry, I totally forgot about that. So check out her choice board on here. And like I said, I started tweaking it for target languages, but I just didn't, it was a lot and I didn't quite get through it, but you can do it. Last question, do me a favor. Those of you who are still here in the chat box, and I know you guys got to take off here. I appreciate we're like going crazy here. In the chat box really quickly, put in one thing after everything. I mean, a lot of you have been through with us the whole summer. What's one thing that you didn't do last spring that you're definitely going to do this fall? Just throw that in the chat box for me. I'm going to save it. I love that. Yeah. All these offline activities is what we actually, all of us who are older of a certain age are like, this is what we did before the internet even existed, which some of you are like, the internet didn't exist. So yeah, a lot of us are like, this is what I used to do 25 or 30 years ago. So yeah, throw in the chat box really quickly, just for my personal knowledge and for OFLA, what's one thing you didn't do before that you're definitely going to do this fall for remote learning? Nella, any other questions? Are we good, do you think, in there? Oh, you had Nella, you're muted. You had a question about where's the information going to be posted? You're muted. You're muted. There you go. Now I can.
Okay. Hold on.
Does she want the ODE, that like the August thing?
Oh, somebody wanted to know about last week. You mentioned DraftBack last Thursday. How do you get it?
DraftBack. Oh, yeah, DraftBack.
Google Marketplace.
Yeah, I think it was the Thursday one where we did that online translators, because I totally forgot to put this in there and I was so upset. DraftBack is, and I put a link to it in that, on that site, like right up at the top. DraftBack is a Google extension. I think it's an extension where you can have a video playback of all the keystrokes in the Google document that the kid wrote. So if you play back and there's like no text and all of a sudden a whole paragraph appears, you know that they probably use Google Translate or they copy and pasted text from somewhere. So I haven't used it myself. I need to get in and mess around, but I put the link in the online translator session from last Thursday. But that was a great way to, you know, if a kid's like, no, I totally wrote this myself. And you're like, well, here's the video of your document. And I see that you wrote an entire paragraph with one keystroke. So, you know, so that's what the DraftBack was.
Okay.
Any other questions, or you think we're good?
I think we're good. I went through it and I think we kind of got everything. Everybody loved the sessions and they are encouraging to keep going.
Yes, we'll keep going. Well, it's fun for me too, because like I said, I'm not, you know, usually I teach, at least get to teach ESL classes, and I'm not doing any teaching. I'm like, I got to keep my, you know, creative juices flowing here they finally did actually just tell us, I'm going to actually stop recording right here. Oops, hang on a second. I'll stop recording.